Whether you're trying to master a complicated new skill, or maybe you're angling to advance your career, or honestly, just desperately trying to find some basic peace of mind in this chaotic modern world, you probably focus almost all of your energy on internal effort.
Right, yeah, like the whole self-help grind.
Exactly. You meditate, you read all the latest books, you push yourself to just, grind harder. We all share this deep-seated assumption that with enough willpower and internal discipline, we can conquer any external circumstance.
It's a very appealing idea.
But what if your physical surroundings actually dictate your absolute limits? Like, what if trying to achieve a higher state of existence, true enlightenment, or just profound peace in your current life, your current zip code, your current living situation, is physically and fundamentally impossible?
It is a deeply unsettling proposition because it strips away that illusion of total control we all love to cling to.
Oh, absolutely.
We're endlessly conditioned to believe that our ultimate potential is just locked inside of us, right? Just waiting for us to find the right mental key. But today's source material completely dismantles that hyper-individualistic framework.
And that's why we're here. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Our mission today is to explore a truly radical, uncompromising philosophical essay from 2017. It was written by an author named Xue Feng, and it carries the very provocative title, Environment Creates Immortals and Buddhas. And let me tell you, this text does not pull any punches about what is actually holding you back.
It really doesn't. To establish the ground rules of this essay right up front, the foundational premise is that achieving a higher state of life, which Sofeng refers to as becoming an immortal or a Buddha, is entirely dependent on your environment.
Right, not your willpower, your environment.
Exactly. And the author divides this mandatory environment into two distinct categories. First, there's the mental environment, which involves building a spiritual garden inside your own mind. That represents the internal work we're all pretty familiar with.
The meditation, the mindfulness, all that stuff.
Yeah, that's part one. But the second category, which is really the entire focus of our deep dive today, is the living environment. This means the actual, tangible, physical world you inhabit every single day.
And Xue Feng makes the uncompromising case that if your physical living environment is incorrect, all the internal spiritual gardening in the world will not save you.
Not even a little bit.
To really grasp how the living environment creates our ultimate spiritual ceiling, the author argues we first have to look at how it shapes historical greatness and even our most basic physical biology. The essay opens with that classic proverb, turbulent times create heroes.
Yeah, the author is making an argument about activation here. Potential is essentially meaningless without the precise external catalyst required to ignite it.
The text points directly to the highest-ranking generals of World War II to demonstrate this. It lists this incredibly heavy-hitting roster. We're talking Soviet Marshal Zhukov, British General Montgomery, U.S. Generals Eisenhower and Marshall, Japanese Admiral Yamamoto, U.S. Admiral Nimitz, and German Field Marshals Manstein and Kesselring.
Right, these are names permanently etched into global history.
But Xue Feng's argument is that without the specific, horrifying, all-consuming environment of the Second World War, we wouldn't know a single one of those names.
The underlying mechanism of that claim requires some unpacking, I think, because the author isn't merely suggesting these military minds happen to be in the right place at the right time to get a promotion.
Oh, no, it goes way deeper than that.
It goes much deeper. The premise is that without that massive, unprecedented global conflict, these individuals would have remained entirely ordinary people. They would have been, as the text poetically describes it, swallowed by the dust of history.
Just normal guys working desk jobs or whatever.
Exactly. The environment of total war didn't just provide a convenient stage for their pre-existing brilliance. It actively forged the heroes by applying a pressure so intense, it forced latent, dormant capabilities to the surface.
So the environment itself was the active ingredient.
Yes. Without the war, the specific neural pathways and tactical brilliances of those men would have literally remained unformed.
That is wild. And the source takes this concept of environmental activation and applies it to human biology and diet, too, which I found surprisingly grounded for a philosophical text.
Yeah, the dietary stuff is fascinating.
It really is. For example, it looks at regional dietary quirks. We tend to associate certain flavor profiles with specific cultures, assuming it's just an innate preference or tradition. The text notes that people in Shaanxi notoriously love vinegar, people in Guangdong love sweets, and folks in Hunan and Sichuan love incredibly spicy food.
But Sui Feng insists that this is not due to some genetic predisposition to chili peppers or sugar. The author views it as a biological adaptation to a microclimate. The environment dictates what the body requires to maintain equilibrium.
The essay claims that if you take someone who absolutely loathes vinegar, right,
Hmm.
and you move them to Aksu in the Xinjiang region, the environment will go to work on them.
It will change them.
Yeah. After a while, they will actively crave vinegar.
Hmm.
Their body will demand it. Conversely, if you take a native vinegar-loving person from Shanxi and move them across the globe to Canada for an extended period, that craving completely evaporates.
It's like the physical environment literally reaches into their biology and rewrites their internal desires based on the atmospheric and geographic conditions.
And we can trace this logic directly into how the author views physical health, too.
Yeah, the essay extends this environmental dominance to specific medical conditions, citing some really interesting geographic cures.
Oh, the health examples were crazy.
They are. The text states that if someone suffering from high blood pressure relocates to the island nation of Vanuatu, their high blood pressure will naturally disappear over time.
Just from moving there.
Just from the move. It notes that a person debilitated by rheumatoid arthritis can find their symptoms completely vanishing if they immerse themselves in a desert environment.
Wow.
And it mentions that chronic asthma can be highly mitigated simply by moving to Harar, Zimbabwe. The mechanism here is that the body is constantly in a dialogue with its surroundings, absorbing the climate, the atmospheric pressure, and the local microbial life.
It is just wild to think about our human bodies continuously adapting to the background radiation of our local geography. It's like, we treat human potential the way we treat houseplants.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Right. Like, you can take a fern and you can water it diligently, give it the absolute best soil, talk to it every morning. But if you put that fern in a dark closet, it is not going to grow.
No, of course not.
It is physically incapable of photosynthesizing. Just as that fern structurally lacks the physical photons needed to survive in that closet, Xuefeng is arguing that our modern environments structurally lack the spiritual photons required for human ascension.
And if our internal biology and our historical trajectories are so utterly subservient to our zip codes and our eras, the implications for our spiritual capacity are staggering.
Yeah, they really are.
The author takes this biological malleability to its absolute extreme. If a move to Canada can rewire your taste buds, your spiritual capacity must be just as trapped by your daily surroundings.
Which means our standard, modern living environments are not just neutral backdrops where we happen to mediate or practice mindfulness. They are active, hostile barriers to achieving any sort of higher state of existence.
Yeah, active barrier captures the author's tone perfectly. This is the point in the essay where Xuefeng takes a sledgehammer to the most foundational institutions of modern human life.
If you thought the geographic manipulation of vinegar cravings was interesting, the author's take on the modern family is going to blow your mind.
It's definitely the most controversial part of the text.
Oh, for sure. The source makes the incredibly provocative, uncompromising claim that living in a marriage or a traditional family environment makes achieving a higher spiritual state completely impossible. Not difficult. Impossible.
The author uses some very specific, vivid analogies to illustrate the physics of this impossibility. The essay states that trying to become an immortal or a Buddha while embedded in a family structure is exactly like Thomas Edison sitting on an egg hoping to hatch it.
Wait, which is a real historical anecdote, right? Edison actually tried hatching goose eggs in a barn when he was a kid.
It did, yeah. And it highlights the author's point about environmental incompatibility perfectly. It failed because Edison simply did not possess the environmental conditions, the specific avian biology, the exact thermal heat transfer required to incubate an egg.
Right, he's a human, not a bird.
Exactly. You cannot force a biological process with sheer willpower if the physical environment is fundamentally wrong. The author reinforces this by comparing it to taking delicate tropical plants from the warm climate of Yunnan and trying to keep them alive in the freezing, brutal winters of China's northeast.
It's just not going to happen.
You can have the purest intentions, you can try as hard as you want, but the ambient temperature of that environment will absolutely kill the plant.
The quotes the author uses in this section are incredibly blunt. I want to read this exactly as it's translated, because it really captures the unyielding nature of the philosophy. Xufeng writes, quote, "Marriage and family are where ordinary secular people are born. Just like a garbage heap is where mosquitoes and flies are born, not bees.
The visual contrast there is really striking, and it relies on a very specific logic about mundane distraction. A garbage heap produces flies because it is composed of decay and worldly waste. It offers the exact nutrients flies need to multiply.
Okay, so to Guefen, the traditional family unit is composed of an endless pile of earthly tethers. Wait, I have to jump in here on behalf of anyone listening who is currently raising kids or happily married. Calling a loving family a garbage heap is incredibly harsh.
It is very harsh.
Is the author entirely dismissing the spiritual value of love, empathy, and raising children? Or is this purely about the distraction of daily chores? Because I think most people find their deepest sense of spiritual connection through their family.
Well, the author is not necessarily condemning love in a moral sense. We have to be clear about that. It's more about dissecting the mechanics of attachment.
Okay, mechanics of attachment.
Right. A core requirement for becoming a Buddha or an immortal in this specific philosophical framework is absolute non-attachment. You cannot achieve an unattached transcendent state if you are anchored to the ground by very real secular concerns.
Like paying the mortgage.
Exactly. You're worrying about your children's tuition, you're arguing with your spouse over finances, you're managing relationships with in-laws. Those things anchor you firmly to the secular world. The family environment naturally produces ordinary secular people because a secular existence is the only outcome that specific environment can support.
And it culminates in this wonderfully absurd quote, "If you can become a Buddha in a marriage or family, a donkey can fly an airplane."
I love that quote. It perfectly sums up the structural impossibility argument.
It really does. But the author doesn't just single out the middle-class family, which is interesting. This disqualification extends to the very top of our modern social hierarchy. If you are a boss, a company owner, a high-ranking government official, or if you hold a massive amount of wealth, the author says you are also entirely barred from reaching a higher spiritual state.
Yeah, the people who have ostensibly won the capitalist game are viewed as the most deeply trapped of all.
Really? Why them?
The essay points to the crushing cognitive load carried by these individuals. They are surrounded by a relentless daily swarm of worries, administrative hassles, and strategic calculations. Their environment demands constant vigilance and stress just to maintain their position.
Oh, that makes sense. The author Riley notes that for people in these positions of immense power and wealth, simply managing not to become a devil, meaning someone consumed by greed or cruelty, is already a stroke of incredibly good luck.
Yeah, they've completely exhausted their mental bandwidth. There is zero environmental peace left over to even attempt becoming an immortal.
Every ounce of their energy is consumed by maintaining the complex structures they've built around themselves, which honestly flips our entire cultural narrative on its head.
Totally.
Most of us view building a family, achieving a successful career, or securing financial stability as the necessary foundation that will eventually, allow us to pursue personal growth. We tell ourselves, like, once I get that promotion, once the mortgage is finally paid off, once the kids are out of the house, then I can focus on my spiritual well-being.
But Schweffing is arguing that the very foundation we are bleeding ourselves dry to build is actually a cage we are locking ourselves inside of.
Right. So if everyday life actively prevents spiritual ascension, what is the alternative? How does the author define the right environment?
Well, the essay doesn't just leave us with abstract complaints. It provides a highly specific 8-point blueprint for the perfect living environment.
That 8-point blueprint.
And rather than walking through them as just a numbered list, it really helps to look at how these conditions systematically sever the different types of tethers that bind us. The first major category of conditions involves completely removing all physical and survival friction.
Getting rid of the daily grind.
Exactly. Schweffing dictates that there must be absolute zero worry about basic needs. Food, clothing, shelter, transport, birth, aging, illness, and death. All of these primal anxieties must be eradicated from your daily consciousness.
So you're not just surviving. Your environment is so perfectly calibrated that the physical demands of staying alive require zero mental energy.
Right. You also need a beautiful environment with consistently good weather and the ability to act freely without any physical obstacles or shackles.
Wait, good weather is a requirement.
Yeah, because if you're freezing, your body is stressed. You are physically restricted by climate or geography.
Wow, that alone eliminates 99% of the human experience. But then the blueprint moves into severing social and psychological tethers, which sounds even more radical.
It is. The psychological requirements demand absolute freedom from pressure, findings, worries, anxiety, harassment, chores, responsibilities, and obligations.
That sounds like a vacation that never ends.
Basically, the author specifies the need for a relaxed mind and body, surrounded by beautiful scenery and, interestingly, claymates.
Playmates.
Yeah, people to just be at ease with. There must also be total peace, which means no risks, no crises, and critically, no noise.
No noise. Just think about the modern world for a sec. We live in a relentless hum of smartphone notifications, traffic, construction, and background anxiety. To exist in a state of zero noise is almost unfathomable today.
It's incredibly rare. And the author goes even further with the social requirements, dismantling the very idea of a modern community.
How so?
The social conditions are deeply anti-hierarchical. The blueprint dictates that there can be no social etiquette, no favor exchanges, and no human relationship obligations. Furthermore, there must be zero idol worship, zero administrative orders, and zero control.
Let's just ground that in modern reality for a second. The author is saying no networking events, no office politics, no obligatory Thanksgiving dinners with relatives you don't like.
Exactly.
No, you scratch my back, I scratch yours. You cannot be managed by a boss, and you cannot manage anyone else.
None of it.
Looking at this holistic picture, zero survival worries, beautiful weather, total physical freedom, no noise, no social etiquette, and absolutely no bosses. It is basically a blueprint for an absolute utopia.
It really is a total extraction from the human condition as society currently structures it. But Shufeng points to a very compelling piece of historical proof to argue that this isn't just some modern escapist fantasy.
What's the proof?
The essay observes, quote, famous scenic spots are mostly occupied by temples.
Oh, I love this detail. Because throughout history, the architects of Buddhist temples and Taoist monasteries didn't just drop their sanctuaries randomly into forests or the middle of bustling marketplaces.
No, there was profound intentionality behind their placement. The leaders of these ancient spiritual movements actively sought out locations with the best feng shui, the most pristine natural beauty, located as far away as possible from the chaotic, noisy crowds of secular society.
Right, they built them on these misty, inaccessible mountaintops.
Precisely to secure the environmental conditions outlined in this 8-point blueprint. They recognized centuries ago that without engineering the physical environment first, engineering the soul was a futile endeavor.
They were isolating the spiritual photons like the fern in the sun.
Exactly. And the author of this essay, Shufeng, had a massive, career-defining realization about this exact concept.
Yeah, the essay is remarkably transparent about the author's own intellectual journey here. Shufeng reviews that for over a decade, they relentlessly explored the complexities of spiritual growth, writing over 3,000 articles and generating millions of words on the subject.
That is a staggering amount of output.
Right. But after all that exhaustive analysis, the author realized the profound truth of an old proverb. True transmission is just one sentence. False transmission is tens of thousands of books.
Millions of words, thousands of essays, ultimately boiled down to a single, profound shortcut.
The shortcut. Yes.
All the complex theories, the intricate meditations, the endless philosophical debates, they were all secondary. The absolute shortcut to a higher existence is brutally simple in theory, even if it is incredibly difficult to execute in practice.
You simply have to find or create this perfect 8-point environment and just live in it for a while.
Exactly. If you immerse yourself in that space, the environment will naturally do the heavy lifting.
It fundamentally changes the required action from internal struggling to geographic relocation. So what does this actually mean for you, the person listening to this deep dive right now? Because it's a massive paradigm shift.
It really challenges everything we're taught.
The author is essentially arguing that true enlightenment, or whatever version of profound mental peace you are searching for, requires stepping entirely off the grid of human society as it is currently designed. You can't just squeeze in 10 minutes of meditation on your phone before your stressful morning commute and expect to transcend your reality.
Because your commute is the problem.
Right. But the author makes a crucial distinction at the very end of the essay between the mental environment and the physical environment. How are we supposed to practically achieve this perfectly quiet, totally free existence?
This is where the essay pivots from an individual philosophical critique into a call for structural, real-world change. The concluding thesis is very sharp.
What does it say?
Swiffing states that while the mental environment, your internal spiritual garden, is something you absolutely must cultivate individually on your own time, the physical living environment is different. This 8-point utopia of zero stress and total freedom cannot be built alone.
Because if you wander into the woods by yourself, you will simply starve.
Exactly. You'll be consumed by survival anxiety. This environment must be created collectively.
That distinction is the crux of the entire deep dive. Let's summarize the journey we've taken through this source material. We started by looking at how our environment acts as an absolute, undeniable catalyst. How the horrifying turbulence of a global war forged legendary tactical generals out of men who might have otherwise been ordinary.
And how the microclimates of our local geography completely dictate our physical health and even our desire for vinegar or spicy food.
Yeah. From there, we explored the author's uncompromising view that our standard pillars of modern life, the traditional family, corporate management, financial wealth, are actually active traps. They anchor us to a mundane, secular existence characterized by endless cognitive load.
And to break free from that trap, Shufang laid out that incredibly strict blueprint. An environment completely devoid of survival anxiety, social obligations, noise, and administrative control.
It is the exact same type of environment that historical spiritual leaders actively sought to replicate when they built their remote mountaintop temples.
But the ultimate kicker is that you cannot achieve this in isolation. You need to build it with other people.
If we apply this framework to your daily life, even if you have absolutely no desire to become a literal immortal or reach a state of pure Buddhist enlightenment, it remains an incredibly powerful diagnostic tool.
It forces you to take a hard, honest look at your immediate surroundings. How much of your daily stress, your poor dietary habits, or your chronic mental exhaustion is actually a personal failure of willpower? And how much of it is just an inevitable designed byproduct of your zip code, your commute, or a toxic office culture?
Are you endlessly blaming yourself for not growing, when the reality is you're just a fern sitting in a dark closet?
That's the perfect question to ask.
We spend an enormous amount of energy punishing ourselves for not being resilient enough or productive enough, when the truth might be that our physical and social environment is structurally designed to keep us stressed and anchored to the ground.
Realizing that relieves a tremendous amount of pressure. It shifts the burden of perfection off of your internal willpower and places it squarely onto the design of the world around you.
But that realization also demands action. If the environment is the root of the problem, the environment is what must be changed.
Right.
Which leads directly to a final, provocative thought I want to leave you with today. The author insists that while we can and must build our own internal spiritual gardens in isolation, the ultimate physical environment required for true human liberation must be built collectively.
But consider the culture we live in today.
Exactly. We exist in a society that aggressively praises hyper-individualism. We worship the solitary hustle, the self-made billionaire myth, the idea of retreating into our own private, heavily guarded nuclear families. If Shuifeng's ancient logic holds true, are we structurally preventing our own evolution by refusing to build anything truly cooperative?
That's a profound thought.
If you had to convince just a few people to collectively build a mini version of this utopian environment with you today, a place with no noise, no social obligations, and total freedom, where would you even begin?
It's a question that challenges the entire foundation of how we currently choose to live together.
It really is. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive today. Keep questioning the design of your surroundings, keep tending to your internal garden, and most importantly, stay curious. We will catch you on the next deep dive.